Welcome back to the channel. Josh, Grey Duck Customs here. This is going to be a last lamination of a couple molds we're working on. And I've got some fabric already pre-cut. This is 1.5 ounce chop strand mat times 2 layers. And this is a core material. And this is 3mm. It's called Soric. So this is typically used for infusions, but it works really good as mold backer as well. So that's going to help stiffen up that perimeter frame around this. This is a Naca duct. This is going to be a playlist. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe, check out the playlist, turn your notifications on because I like to go live. So you can also find me on Instagram at Grey Duck Customs. If you're into hot rods, you can follow the Hot Rod Project, which is Project Honda Rod, Instagram and YouTube. So Naca ducts will be going in the hot rod, and they are going to be carbon fiber once we get a little bit further on the process. So I'll show you guys that. The other mold that we're working on is a pair of Honda emblems. You can barely see the Honda logo coming through there, just a little bit. That's okay. So same process, 2 layers of chop mat, 1 layer of core mat to go around the perimeter. And we're just going to blast this out real quick. So bring you guys along for the ride. The core mat you can typically do when it's horizontal. Doing it vertical like this makes it a little trickier. But I really do want to get fiberglass down into this vent pocket area. So that's a pretty important part of the process for me. So I'm not concerned about the resin running as much as I am about actually getting down to that pocket. So got my resin system ready to rock and roll here. Just like the last couple videos I've done, we are dealing with Orca 555 laminating resin. And I am also dealing with 925H catalyst. I mentioned this a couple times. This is a snap cure catalyst. So if you guys have watched my previous videos, I'm sorry to be repeating myself, but that way you won't forget when you need to order it on your own. I'm going to mix up a quart to start with. I think that's probably about what this one mold is going to take. I don't think I'll need any more. And then if I do need more, obviously I will finish that and then just move on to the Honda badges. I am running low on catalyst, so I got enough for this job, but I'm going to need to make a trip over to Express Composites. Luckily, Express Composites is local to me, so let's throw a big shout out to these guys. I've been working with these guys for 25 years now, and they've got fiberglass, epoxy, different types of resins. They've got core materials. They've got, paint brushes, rollers, waxes, gel coats. They've got it all. So if you're doing boat repair, making fiberglass molds, check them out. They also ship. So if you are not in Minnesota, they ship nationally. Yeehaw. Catalyst is in, so we are officially on the timer, on the clock. Typically I get about half an hour to do my resin layups here. Well, between half an hour and 40 minutes. It depends on the shop temps. With all this fiberglass resin and epoxy resin, there are a couple rules that you kind of got to follow. You do not want to work in under 50-degree weather. I would go as far as saying 55 is probably the cutoff. So if you have a garage that's not warm, you're going to need a heater. The resin really likes to be done at room temperature, which is 75 to 80 degrees. I would say that 80 degrees would be the perfect temperature. But as long as you're sitting somewhere, above that 70-degree mark, 65, 70, you'll be okay. So rule number one, we just get the resin out as quick as we possibly can. There are glues that hold the fabric together, so the resin is what dissolves that. I mention that every single time I do a lamination, so for you guys paying attention, you already know the deal. Get it on. Normally in this opportunity, I would jump to that other mold. And I suppose I could. No, I want to do one at a time. I want to really work on each. I want to work on each one of these really, really kind of intensely, if that makes sense. I want to make sure that all our bubbles are disappeared and I want to make sure it's a nice solid lamination. Using just a sharp scratch tool here, I'm going to poke a couple air bubbles just to help the release a little bit easier for when the fabric starts to conform. That's a little trick of the trade for you guys paying attention. And then let's see if we are far enough along that it's not quite there yet. You can see I'm trying to just push down on this and let the fabric move. And it's still hanging on just a little bit. So I got a couple more minutes before I want to put this down. So what I'm going to start to do is I guess I'm going to start to bubble roll the outside perimeter because that's going to be a little bit easier to start from. I am a little bit conscious about time here, so just going to start getting most of the big bubbles out. I'll come back and catch the small ones once I get that center laid down. But this is the last time I'm going to see this layer, so I really want to make sure I do a good job of bubble rolling. Catch all the little areas. If you need to go over it a couple times, that's not a big deal. There are no awards for going faster. I mean, I guess there's kind of an award. You don't accidentally lock your resin in your cup, but this is not the Olympics, so do a good job rather than a fast job. Most of those bubbles are getting taken care of pretty easily. The next layer that's going to be going down is the core material. You really want to do a wet on wet application of the core material. So wet fiberglass, core material, and then wet fiberglass on top of it. And you really want that to cure out all at the same time. You're trying to keep the mold flange as flat as possible. So doing that in one stage is the correct way of doing it. Let's see if our Naca duct pocket here is movable. It sure is. So there we go. And I'm just literally stretching the fabric down to that pocket area. No scissors, no ripping, no tearing, no nothing like that. Just natural physics doing its work there. And because I poked the holes in this fabric before I started pushing it down, all these air bubbles actually have a place to go. So that's very, very nice for the air release. These are the last couple layers, so I'm not as concerned if there are a couple little air bubbles. Whereas the surface layers, I was very, very concerned, and I really wanted to do a good job on the surface layers because that is where you're going to do 90% of your mold work. This is just kind of for structural integrity. So if it's not perfect, don't freak out. Obviously, you want to try to do the best job you can, but if there are a couple little pinholes here and there, it's not the end of the world. That's a really tricky area to see. I'll get a light in a minute. That's okay. That's looking really good though. So I'm going to grab my core material now. And the core material is going to basically sit like so. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to paint some resin on this side first. You'll see what I do here in just a second. But this is a little bit resin heavy compared to the fiberglass mat. So this will definitely eat your resin in the cup. And you want it to do that. You want to fill all these little honeycombs with resin is the goal here. And that's going to create your core structure. It's going to be a really nice mold for running infusions here. I'm very excited to have a Naca duct mold. Universal race car part. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip this around like so. I'm going to position it exactly where I want it here. Because you get one shot. Once the resin cures off, you cannot move it, obviously. So that looks really good. And then more resin. Start at the top, work our way down. Let gravity do its work a little bit. Kind of fill in all those channels. Now, one little trick that you could do, and I'm just going to say this, I don't know if I will or not. Yeah, let me do it just to show you guys the trick. So one little trick is right now, there's a fairly hard edge around this core material, right? And so to combat that, you can take just a little bit of resin, pour it in a cup. Doesn't need to be a lot of resin. Sorry, I'm off camera. Take a little bit of resin, pour it in a cup, and then get some milled fiberglass. This is just fiberglass powder. And you just want to mix it together. And this is going to create like a putty or a paste, right? And then what we can do with this putty, might need a little bit more resin. It's a little dry right now. It might be all right. So it's kind of eyeball. What we want to do from here is basically run that putty right along that edge. That'll help that transition out a lot. You can see that's starting to run just a little bit, so I gotta hurry. It's all good. All good. It'll move around once we put that top layer on it anyway, so don't need to freak out over it. But what's going to happen here is you're not going to have that hard edge for bubbles to get caught up in, which is kind of nice. A little pro trick of the trade there. No gatekeeping here at Grey Duck Customs. If you guys are watching the lives or going back through the history or anything like that, this is where the tricks are. I'm going to take our second layer of glass, drop this down, and again, real quick, just get the resin out. I think I guessed on my resin pretty close. I'm getting down to that bottom of the cup there, that quart. This is going to be a real stable mold with that core material in there. And what I'll probably end up doing after the fact is taking, well, I really guessed perfect. Check that out. I'm down to next to nothing. What I'll probably end up doing is taking a little bit of wood, whether that's plywood or pine wood or something like that, and building a frame around here to kind of help make sure the mold stays stable. All right, so all of our resin is used up at this point. short a little bit on the brush. So I guessed about as close as it gets on that one, didn't I? Almost like I've done this a time or two, huh? Okay. Now we're going to come back with our fiberglass roller and re-roll all of it. And it's going to take a minute or two for that center area to relax with the glues dissolving. So just roll the rest of the core material out like so. This is going to be a really nice mold. I can't wait to make some parts. I can't wait to show you guys how to make these parts. This is going to be a cool little how-to. When it comes time to do the carbon fiber infusion, stay tuned. Like I said, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you're not notified, turn on the notifications, because lives are where it's at. No editing, no BS, just showing you guys real time what it takes to do this stuff. Tricks of the trade. I'm going pretty slow, just trying to work out any air bubbles that might be on the bottom side of the core material. I'm going to try to zoom in here. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this exactly, but when I'm actually moving, sorry, there we go. So I'm actually moving this. You can see that there's a little bit of a wave that's happening in front of that brush. Can you see that? That would be extra resin just moving across. Let me just push that out. So you want to be very, very patient. Not a lot of pressure, just a little bit of pressure, and eventually you'll get to the point where you don't have those waves anymore, and that means that you don't have any air bubbles. So again, not a lot of pressure, just a little bit of pressure. Work that resin, work the bubbles. That's working really good. It's almost meditating. Well, it is meditating. If you don't like this kind of stuff, you shouldn't be doing it. Find something you love to do. Pro tip. Pro tip to be happy in life by Grey Duck Customs. Find something you love to do and do it. Okay, and I'm going to grab that little poker tool again. I'm just going to poke some holes in the fiberglass to help the air release. Grab my paintbrush here, and you can literally see the fiberglass just stretching. And that is what you want to do. Nice and consistent uniform thickness. I'm going to do a little bit of stippling here, try to get some of that. Try to get some of that mixed slurry spread around a little bit more consistently. I'll try to hit this with the roller tool, but it's not a big deal with this. Oh, sorry. Losing camera view there for you guys. That's why lives are so fun. You never know what you're going to get. Sorry. It could go good. It could go bad. All right, let's see if we can get down in that pocket. I'm going to add a little bit of glass down this pocket here once I get everything else rolled around. Okay, there we go. That is looking fantastic. That is looking like a proper mold, my friends. Get that roller tool down there. Get out any remaining air bubbles that we got. And I like to say, as long as you have work time with your resin, as long as it's not starting to gel up on you or, rock out, just keep working your air bubbles. Keep working it. Again, you're not in a rush to win a race here. You can take your time and really do it right. Make sure you're happy with it. And then when you are happy with it, stop, because you don't need to go any further. Kind of work around the perimeter a little bit more. Make sure that we haven't missed anywhere. This is looking fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to put just a little bit more down in that pocket, and I'm going to use a very thin 3/4 ounce chop mat right down the center of that pocket. And that's just going to soak up any excess resin that's already down there. So that'll just kind of naturally do its own thing. I don't need to touch it a whole lot and poke it out, in terms of getting the bubbles out. It's just going to naturally soak up whatever's on the top there. We'll just let that sit for a couple minutes. I'm in no rush. Okay, got to clean my roller tool out because we're going to keep rocking. We're going to keep rolling. We're going to go straight to the Honda badge mold and do the same thing. A little acetone in a cup goes a long way to keep your roller tool clean. Okay, one trick of the trade is, since I've already used this cup, I'm not going to put more resin in there because that would actually increase the cure time on the next batch. So I'm going to set that cup aside. I'm going to grab a new cup, and we're going to mix up resin in a new cup. And since that one took about exactly a quart, I'm going to mix up about the same for this one. Maybe I'll do a little bit less, but it's going to take probably pretty close to the same amount. So I definitely don't want to be short on resin. So let's call it 3/4 of a quart. That should be about right. Again, I've got our Snap Cure Catalyst 925H. So again, with this particular catalyst, it is a long open time, and then when it goes off, it goes off. So the other catalyst that you'll use is typically like a MEKP 9. And with that catalyst, you'll have a very narrow window in terms of work time before the resin actually starts to kick just a little bit. So it'll start to get a little thicker, and it won't wet out as fast. And it stays kind of like a jelly state for much longer than this stuff does. When this stuff starts getting gelled up, it starts to go off very, very, very quick. So if you're doing something big in scale, you might want to hurry up. It's looking pretty good. Let's see how quick I can get this on. I might be able to reuse some of that slurry from that first part. This is a much easier shape to laminate, obviously being flat. Move this over just a little bit here for you guys. There we go. How's that look? Just like downtown. So being flat, that's a little bit easier shape to do than something on a vertical. Neither one of these are what I would consider complex shapes, but that gets a little tricky. That's where this resin viscosity really comes into play when you've got tricky shapes. If it's too thin, it'll run all over the place. If it's too thick, you're not going to be able to wet out the cloth. So we'll let that just sit for a minute there. I want all the glues to dissolve on that before we go any further. As always, if you guys have any questions in the chat, let me know. If you're looking to get into fiberglass fabrication and you want to know where to get stuff, how to do stuff, whatever, feel free to leave a comment. Or if you want, feel free to hit me up on the Instagram as well. Great Up Customs over there as well. Feel free to DM for all your fiberglass questions. And again, the one thing that I don't do around here is gatekeep. So if you need a trick or a tip, product recommendation, just feel free, let me know. I'll help you out. I'm just working on that last little bit of that inside pocket on the other mold right now real quick, since I'm letting that set. So let me do this real quick. There we go. That inside pocket, I'm just doing a little bit more tune-up work, just adding an extra layer real quick. Just stipple that by hand. Normally I'll try to jump back and forth on the laminations, but like I said, with this core mat, it's really important to get all the air bubbles out on that bottom layer before you do the core mat. And I did not want to run out of time accidentally, you know what I mean? I think we're 100% good on that. Yep, that looks perfect. We're good to go. We are good to go. All right, back to the Honda logos. So now that glue's had just a minute to dissolve, it's very, very, very conformable. It's very easy to work the air bubbles out. You can just see how pretty that's getting right there. Air bubbles are already disappearing. And again, this is a pretty small part, so it goes pretty quick. But center out for your rolling. Give the bubbles a place to go. You don't want to put them back into the center, so always roll out. Roll out, roll out, roll out. Doo, 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 doo. Never mind. That's looking really good though. Then we'll drop our core mat down right on top of this. And then we'll put one more layer on there, and that should be pretty much it. I don't think I need to add any more glass. I'm not going to make a million parts off this. This is only going to be probably a, let's call it a, I don't know, 3 or 4 part run. I doubt I'm going to make any more than a couple sets of these. But the hot rod needs some custom badges. So Again, we're putting that resin on the bottom layer first, just to make sure there's plenty of resin on the core mat. We take this and we literally flip it around. And that is where it's going to live permanently. So you do want to position that, move it around if you need to move it around. More resin on the top. And the goal with this stuff is basically all those little teeny tiny honeycombs in there. You just want to make sure it's full of resin. Separating layers of fiberglass offers a lot of rigidity in your molds. So some people would call this a bulker material, and I would call that correct. Let's see, I do have enough. I think I got enough. Let me try something here. I think I got enough of this slurry to paint around the perimeter of this chop mat too. Might have enough of it. Getting close. Painting that slurry is going to help us keep a nice radius on the edge of that core material there. There we go. And last layer going down. Last layer. I bet you guys can't wait to see the results, right? Unfortunately, I have to let this cure, and I won't be popping it out today. Sorry. But I will do a live pop out. That's going to actually probably be comical on this one. I don't necessarily trust the badges popping out easily. So if you want to see some composite comedy, turn your notifications on when I do a live for popping these out. I'm pretty sure we're going to struggle a little bit getting the Honda badges off the mold surface. I've been more confident in other things, put it that way. You know what? I do have one extra layer of glass. I'm just going to slam an extra layer of glass on there too while I'm at it. I got plenty of extra resin here. I overmixed a little bit. I've still got a quarter of that quart. So no big deal. Extra glass, more heavy duty, right? I don't mind that on a flat flange at all. Having a little extra resin, a little extra fiberglass reinforcement. Unfortunately, that's what I have left over. I don't really have any more projects I need that for, so I'm going to end up having to throw that away, unfortunately. It's okay. It's okay. 2 molds. I mean, I did pretty good between that mold and that mold under 2 quarts. I am completely satisfied with that result. So no big deal if we got a few extra ounces left over. And again, I'm going to work from the center, work our way out. You want to give the air somewhere to go. So pull it towards the outside corners, nice and slow, medium pressure. It's a little bit thicker than it normally would be on the top since I just added 2 layers on that final bit. So that's going to take a second to get all the air moved around. This is going to be a really nice mold. These Honda badges are going to turn out sweet. I've mentioned this a couple times for you guys that aren't here yet or new here. These are going to end up being clear casting acrylic. So the badges are going to light up. They're going to be running markers and turn signals as well. So instead of just being regular, plain old, boring car badges, they're going to be glowing. So that should be pretty cool driving around at night, having a little extra light on the side of the car. Yeah, that's a pretty heavy duty mold. one more time, getting all those air bubbles out. So yeah, the only thing left then is I guess tomorrow, happy Friday, pop it out Friday. We'll come back and we'll pop out the Naca duct mold. We'll pop out the Honda badges. We'll see if I actually did it right. I'm pretty confident I did it right, but it's always fun to make it sound like there's gonna be a risk, right? And there might be, like I said, with the Honda badges, I was kind of skeptical about the material they're made out of, whether or not the wax is actually going to stick on there. Again, center out, center out, center out, center out. That's looking really, really good. Okay. And just for shits and giggles, oh, sorry about the language. Sorry, not sorry. Just because I have a little extra resin, I'm going to slam just a tiny bit more fiberglass just kind of around that little corner down there. This stuff is not quite going off yet, so I got just enough time to tune that up just a little bit, add a little bit more reinforcement down there. I think I'm fine before, but like I said, since I have extra resin, I might as well burn it up on something productive. And this is just a 3/4 mat, so it almost soaks up the resin that's there on its own. That'll offer just a little extra rigidity in that mold surface there. And because this is going to be a vacuum mold, any extra rigidity does not hurt. The vacuum pressure can actually distort your mold if it's not strong enough. So keep that in mind. If you're new to the composite fabrication mold making game, if your molds are not strong enough and you try to run a resin infusion, you can actually warp the mold. I don't warp my molds, but I've seen other guys warp their molds by putting too much vacuum on it, and it's oops. Oops. And then obviously when you do that, so let's just say you actually did warp your mold, and I've seen it. What that means is the part is not going to be right as well, obviously, right? So if the mold is warped, then the part is going to be warped. And so I've seen these guys try to run parts before on a warped mold and then wonder why the parts don't fit in the car afterwards. Like, I don't know. Seems like a no-brainer. If your mold is warped, the part's going to be warped. I'd rather err on the too strong side than not enough side. I've still got resin life. Yeah, why not? I'll throw another little chunk down there. I got a couple little scrap chunks here. Why not? Just keep throwing them down there until I run out of resin time. And I'm getting pretty close to that point. I can already kind of start to see the resin's going to gel up a little bit here. So just literally try to use all the excessive resin down there and just soak it into this chop mat real easy. Then I don't feel like I wasted as much resin. The resin's not cheap. That's one thing I will say about doing the composite stuff. Depending on how you buy your materials, whether or not you're buying it in bulk or in small quantity, the smaller the quantity that you buy your materials in, the more expensive you are going to pay for those materials. So if you're only buying your resin by a gallon compared to 5 gallons, you're going to get a better deal if you buy more. And obviously, if you buy a drum, you get even a better deal. If you buy a tanker truck, obviously you get a really good deal. I've never bought resin from a tanker truck myself, but I've worked at shops that have had that done, and it's very impressive. Very impressive to see that much resin just sitting ready to rock and roll on projects. A lot of boat shops and prop effects shop have that kind of capacity, and manufacturing plants as well, but most little garage guys do not need a drum of resin sitting around. So I typically buy mine by the 5-gallon pail just to save a little bit of money. And I pass that savings on to my customers as well. So the better deal I get, the better deal you guys get. I had an old coworker many years ago, made a very famous quote in the shop one day. He said, "It's not cheap to be cool." Shout out Fred Felch of Stay Tuned Car Audio back in the day. It's not cheap to be cool. He was a very wise man. And that is kind of the ongoing joke in the car community when we're all buying fancy gauges and fancy wheels and brake setups and stuff like that and body kits. And it's like, oh, why is everything so expensive? Just gotta be cool, right? This is totally overkill. I'm just doing this for no reason at this point. I can stop anytime here. And I am going to stop. That's it. I've got plenty of resin and plenty of glass on that. That's got to be 4 layers sitting on there at this point. So yeah, there we go, guys. Stage 3, final mold process for our vintage Honda badges and our Naca duct mold. The only thing left to do is pop it out. So hope you guys all have a wonderful afternoon and evening. And I'll catch you next time. Stay tuned for the next live. Pop it out video, pop it out Fridays. So have a good one. See you guys.